welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Hellkitty Titan. And so over the weekend I was playing away with a small Panzer 1C and I thought, hang on a second, that Hellcat looks kind of funny. That's the one that I was aiming my gun at, and I thought the outline of it looked kind of funny behind the bushes, and I thought there's something odd about the turret. And then I realised it's a Hellcat 105. And then I remembered, yes, okay, summer games are over, we've gotten our prize, and autumn games have begun. Same thing again for another new tank. I'm not sure what exactly is the autumn games tank. I must look it up. However, the next 3 months will be occupied by going for a different tank. You know, my enthusiasm is fading, shall we say, for the autumn games metaphor. I'm not even sure what the tank is for autumn games, and I'm not sure whether I'll go because I think I'll take a lot of time off at Christmas. So I may not get the third one. Anyway, 105mm gun on howitzer gun on a Hellcat chassis. What's it like? While I personally would prefer the Tech 3 Hellcat fully upgraded, because I like reliable, accurate, fast-firing guns that have reliable penetration. I'm not as keen on guns that have poor gun handling. So personally, I would like I prefer the 90mm gun on the Hellcat. This thing probably is though. That said, this thing is probably overpowered, in my opinion, because it's not bad. I mean, it's not as good. It's significantly worse in the gun handling department than the regular Tech 3 Hellcat. It's still a Hellcat. You still have a lot of the Hellcat advantages. Now you have an overall less versatile tank, but we'll go into the pluses first. First of all, you've got almost as good as the regular Hellcat mobility. I think it's got a top speed of 65 kilometers an hour, relative to, I think it's 75 kilometers an hour for the Hellcat, although I think originally the Hellcat could do 80. If our memory serves me. However, the Hellcat can do but that's not really noticeably slower. And the mobility is pretty good. You do notice that it's not as fast, but you also know its handling, shall we say, at least on the terrain types that I've been on so far, seems to me to be pretty good. The view range is not quite as good. It's 360 against 370. The Tech 3 Hellcat is 370 meters view range. This thing is 360, but it's still plenty good enough. I didn't really notice the lack of view range. The stealth is the same, so this is as stealthy as the original Hellcat, and the Hellcat's quite one of the stealthier Tier 6 tank destroyers out there. So what are you sacrificing for it? Well, you're sacrificing a little bit of versatility. The gun handling is significantly worse. This thing, the regular Hellcat loads in 8 seconds base. This thing's 10.5 second reload, which is still pretty fast for the size of the gun and the alpha damage of the gun. It's better than the 12 second plus reload in, say, an SU-100. Well, the SU-100 is better alpha, but overall worse gun handling than the 105 in this thing. However, the gun handling is not as good as I said in the Hellcat. So if you're used to the Hellcat, you're used to that kind of precision gun handling, you will take a while getting used to this thing, because you can't really snapshot it, and therefore you shouldn't, because you have probably a reasonable amount of ammo, but you don't have a lot of ammo. You could run I could see myself running out of ammo in this tank on certain occasions. So you have 0.4 accuracy as distinct from 0.35, which is a huge difference. You've got, as I said, a longer reload, and you've got a 2.6 second. I think it's 2.6 second aiming time. Was it 2.6, 2.4? It's a 2.4 second aiming time, and which is longer. I mean, it is again 1.7. And it's the combination of the 0.35 accuracy and the 1.7 second aiming time that you really notice the differences. Now, the basic shells have, I don't know, a slightly better 10mm, 8mm, something like that. So the base armor piercing round is 5mm better penetration, and the heat round, the premium round on the 105mm gun, is what about 35mm worse. And with the lower accuracy, that means that you will have really difficult time hitting at range. What you call it? You'll have a difficult time hitting weak spots at range. 0.4 accuracy, as distinct from 0.35. You almost will find it almost impossible at long ranges to hit weak spots. Now, at medium ranges, probably doable, because it's not as bad, say, as the Soviet tank destroyers, which have higher alpha but much worse gun handling, and they don't have turrets. Speaking of turrets, the turret is really slow. I mean, it is dreadfully slow. It's one of the worst turrets I've seen in the game. It's up there with the Borsig. It's probably worse than the Borsig. It's probably not quite as bad as a KV2, but it's pretty bad. And that limits the tank as well, because it means that if you get into a knife fight, you're in trouble. I mean, it's quite likely that a tank like an IS or an IS-3 could actually beat your turret rotation, encircling you with this tank. However, it's a hard-hitting gun. It does 320 average damage with the base armor-piercing rounds, and 350 for the heat rounds. And the slower muzzle velocity also means that there's a kind of an arc, a firing arc. It'll take more lead to aim at moving targets, but it also has a firing arc. So against stationary targets, you might be able to, first of all, lob shots in behind cover, but also there's a good chance that you'll strike weaker upper armor, roof armor and stuff like that, with incoming fire, depending on your angle and direction, especially if you're firing downhill at people. And you're doing considerably more alpha damage, like your 240 is the alpha damage for the regular 90mm Take 3 Hellcat. So, for the average player, this is a big difference. The kind of person who goes out with a Hellcat and gets 2 penetrating shots per battle is now likely to double their damage output from 480 to 640. Which will be in excess of their hit points. They'll actually get more than their hit points worth of damage on more battles. So all of a sudden they will see actually a massive improvement in their statistical rating if they play this tank. So you could pad stats quite comfortably actually with this thing, even as you're a relatively poor player. And I think even good players with good situational awareness will be able to go to town on this yoke, simply because of the amount of damage that the gun does, and the fact that it's got a turret, so it's got flexibility, say, that some of the harder hitting tank destroyers, like the Russian ones, for instance, doesn't have. So they've got better gun handling. Okay, slightly less alpha, and a higher rate of fire. What's not to like? Okay, the penetration stats aren't as good, but you still have the advantages of the stealth, you have the advantages of the turret, you have the advantages of a pretty good view range in the tank anyway. And with equipment and crew, you can make up for a lot of the disadvantages of the tank, and the rest of it is just positional awareness and shooting people in the right place. And when you're top tier or you're in an open battlefield and you've got room to fight, you really clean up with this tank. Whereas, and even on constricted battlefields where you might not get the opportunity to fire too many shots, you're still going to get off a couple of shots. You're probably going to hit and penetrate with, enough. If you were capable of doing well with a Hellcat in an urban map anyway, you'll still do well with a Hellcat in this urban map. It's just certain aggressive playstyles mightn't be open, but you'll be able to compensate for that if you're a good player. And you've got this very, very formidable machine that just does a lot of damage, and it does fairly scary damage. And after a time, people will become scared of this kind of damage, because once you're getting into a gun that does over 300 points of damage at tier 6, it really causes people to sit up and pay attention. For a lot of tier 6 tanks, that's up to half to a third of their health pool. And even for tier 7 and 8 tanks, 320 points of damage is enough to make anybody sit up and pay attention. The only thing that might not be terribly scared of this tank is heavily armoured tier 8 tanks. Stuff that might be able to bounce a reasonable amount of the incoming fire from a Hellcat, particularly if they're well angled, and that have high health pools in the first place. I mean, it is just as fragile as a regular Hellcat. Okay, there's slightly more hit points, but that's marginal. And I think that's just to compensate for the fact that it's also got a slightly lower rate of fire. And the poor gun handling, just to give it that little bit of extra survivability, but it can trade quite effectively. And you can quite comfortably rack up 2k battles in this thing. I've already got, 9 battles in it as compared to the almost 800 battles in the Tech Tree Hellcat. And my average damage is already higher. And it's probably, you know, the more I play this, the higher it's likely to get. Now, that's partly because there's no equivalent of stock on this. It's a premium tank, so I've never played it with the poorer guns and the lower gun handling. And I've also don't have the history of playing the Hellcat back into the days when I was a really, really poor player, which drags down my total, because probably the first 300 games that I played in the Hellcat, I was a really crap player. So we've 1 tank remaining, and we've 18k damage. Now the damage ribbons here are a bit flattering and misleading, because obviously I set somebody on fire and I got a lot of damage ribbons from that, and I'm going to go for it. Yes, I am definitely, I thought this was worth it, but he wasn't quite where I thought he was. He'd have moved. I think I'd have gotten him if he hadn't moved, but you know, and the turret is not fast enough to line up on somebody on the way down. So there you have it. Now this game is pretty much over. He's not going to survive anyway. Not with the amount of tanks that are left. The fact that he's down in the low ground. Because all it needs is somebody to sit in the cap circle. And he's going to come after them. However, how do we do? Well, I think this is early days, so we got actually over 2,123 damage. Must have blind fired somebody. And we got a first class mastery. We came number 1 by experience. So 8 shots, 7 penetrating shots, and every penetrating shot, every shot that hit penetrated, which is as good as you can ask for, really. Overall, this is a very good tank and very powerful tank. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press like, comment, share. It really helps the channel out. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.